Let me tell you the problem with low cut jeans being a trend. It's not that I have anything against low cut jeans. It's that when it comes to like jeans in general, I feel like different rises fit different body types. So for one to be a trend means that like somebody's losing. Like the whole like stiff jeans thing that looks like they're a wedgie in the back, the person losing is me. With low rise jeans, the person losing is anybody tall. So, like, maybe what we learned is we're all losers today. Also, we are live now here to talk about TV and also Kate's elder Gen Z jean opinions. What kind of jeans do you like then?
I like mid-rise. I have mid-rise skinny jeans and like high-rise mom jeans. It's mainly what's in my closet
Okay. So, the mom
because
jeans
I am the
situation,
tall.
I feel like the mom
Yeah,
jeans
I am
situation
tall. I have
only
to.
looks good on tall girls, though. Like y'all can pull it off, but mom jeans on a short girl, I say this as somebody who's 5'3", it just like on me, and partially it's because I'm old, but like I feel like mom jeans on me being short just makes me look like a literal mom mushroom.
I don't know because like my best friend is about your height and she wears them all the time and I think they look great on her. That's what got me into wearing them. But I think there is a larger trend of taller people wearing them. I I kind of agree.
I think they just look there's something a little bit more like elegant and refined about them on a taller person, whereas on a shorter person it just doesn't work. And I'm not I'm not anti, this is not anti short person slander. This is not me being self depreciatory. There's likewise certain styles that look good on a 5'3" person that don't work as well or whatever. So like with a certain color being a trend or like a certain hair part being a trend, which is how we got on this because I'm back to a middle part today because I'm an elder, whatever. I think like when it comes to something like jeans or something that fits you, it's like, okay, so a certain fit is a trend. Lovely. Like that doesn't work for everybody. But not everything is for everybody, which is what we're going to get into when we get into some of the good doctor ships. I look way too
That
excited for having
segue.
for having just had my heart broken by the good doctor this week. But before we get into that, Kate, do you have any news for us this week to kick us off? Anything new about TV, movies, Marvel?
For last week being such a newsworthy week, I bring nothing to the table this week.
Okay, okay. For me, all I have to mention is that we've got some new promos for shows coming out soon. So we've got a promo for Katie's season of The Bachelorette, like an actual promo, not just like the little teaser thing that they did to the Selena Gomez song. And we had a little teaser for Stranger Things. I think there were some other ones I forgot about this week, but we are in kind of a promo season, which is very off season. It feels weird to get a lot of stuff hyped right now, but it's because we're just now getting promotional materials for stuff that started to be filmed around the time that COVID restrictions got slightly looser. I say this with all the caveats of being in Georgia, where there really were no major COVID restrictions at any point in time, and everything filmed here whenever they felt like it. So you have us to thank if you've got any good television to watch right now. But we won't be talking about much good television tonight, with the exception of The Good Doctor. And with that, Kate, I'm tossing it to you. I want to hear your rating of The Good Doctor season 1 and what you believe to be your most unpopular The Good Doctor opinion.
I would give season one a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
It was pretty good, pretty consistent. At least for a medical drama, I was pretty entertained. I liked most of the characters. I believed a lot of the stuff that was going on. Great. I don't know it would be a controversial opinion. I'm just taking a guess it would be a controversial opinion. Because this character is no longer in the show. He left. Jared. I loved Jared.
I, for the life of me, don't remember who Jared is. Who was Jared?
Jared Kalu. He was the tall guy. He left just the very beginning of season two. He got fired temporarily because he assaulted the other doctor in defense of Claire. Sued
I
the yeah.
do remember him. I do remember him.
Mhm.
You know, Claire's had some good love interests.
Yes. Now, to be honest, that is the one part of his story that I could have given or taken is his small romance with Claire. I like Claire too, don't get me wrong, but it was just kind of like they only kind of were wetting their toes with it. They bring it up one episode, then we forget about it for weeks or for episodes, and then all of a sudden they're back. So that part I was kind of like, eh. But him as a character was really fascinating because he reminds me of a almost like an Alex Karev character. I know you're not a huge Grey's Anatomy person. I don't know if you ever watched any of it, but he kind of came in with like the bad boy jerk persona. Um, but you slowly saw his heart, whereas this guy had kind of like a troubled upbringing, and he had a lot of potential to be kind of this like heartless guy, this guy that was pretentious, this guy that wanted it just for the glory. And he was actually a really caring guy, and he did a lot to help Sean, which I thought was a fantastic take on like how his story could have gone, because he still had aspects of the rich kid, he still had aspects of that kind of stereotype. But probably the second most caring character in the show behind Claire.
Mm-hmm. I do remember him. And while you were talking, I also just looked up a picture just to make sure I'm like putting the right face to everything. You know, it reminded me, and I realized that's why it was so familiar. And this is going to bother you, particularly because you're
Mm-hmm.
marathoning it. It bothered me, but I didn't make the connection back to Jared. In the latest season, hopefully this isn't too spoilery, they did have for a bit a very casual, not serious at all love interest. Wasn't even super, you know, like they weren't even officially dating, but there was a love potential or date potential person for her that seemed really familiar. And he's kind of like a, I don't even want to compare him to Jared, but it was like a similar vibe wherein it was somebody who had such a strong like personal character trait or personal character background that they exist. I don't know how to say this. Like basically they bring in somebody who is like a modern hippie, I guess, and which is the antithesis of like the rich kid raised in the lap of luxury type of thing. But it was similar in that it's constantly forcing Claire to see a new perspective, and I hated it because it wasn't done very well, and I didn't think that that was a perspective that she needed or that really like jived with her current stage in life. He came across as younger, even though he wasn't, by quite a lot. And it, also because he was a subordinate to her in a way, sort of, which we'll get into what you think about that when we get into Claire and Melendez. But it, I think it was kind of like retroactively making me miss Jared. And I think you'll get there. You'll feel the same when you get there. Stormy, you mentioned Grey's Anatomy. Stormy in the chat,
Okay.
first of all says hello, and she says Grey's Anatomy was renewed for another season. I'm going back and rewatching on Netflix since I stopped when Lexi died. So you watched Grey's Anatomy? I've never watched an episode of Grey's Anatomy in my life.
I hadn't watching the show, and it was just a show I had on in the background a few months ago, and I got caught up. And then I started to watch this season. A lot of things in the season were driving me crazy, so I stopped. Also, things that happened in last season kind of were the last straw for me. Then I heard things that did happen in this season that I'm glad I wasn't watching. So it's kind of those things I may one day go back and rewatch, but I am not currently watching this season.
I'm always seeing people like lose their ever loving minds over like a ship from Grey's Anatomy. Like it's season 56 or whatever at this point, and somebody is. And I'm like, part of me's like, I want to lose my mind over a shit from Grey's Anatomy. Like, that's fun. Like, like I'm a sucker for pain. I'm always here to like show up, be disappointed, get my heart broken, and have some other shit I don't care about be shoved down my throat. Like, I've never had self respect before, and I won't start now. But something about it, just like, I don't know, like the fact, I feel like it's like, it's a show that doesn't necessarily have a vested interest in pleasing its viewers. I think it has a vested interest in just getting a shock out of its viewers, which is maybe all television right now. But I just feel like if I watched it, I would spend more time being mad than happy. And so long as I'm still watching The Flash, I just don't have a spot in my roster for that dynamic. Stormy also says, another bit of TV news. This Is Us
fair.
is officially ending after season
with
6.
Grey's, I was just going to say for Grey's, so I enjoyed it because I was marathoning it, so I could avoid the shockers and stuff like that. But I mean, the entirety of the original main cast, except 3 people, are gone. And I can't really blame the ABC for not canceling it yet because it is such a cash cow for them. But I don't particularly think that for the quality of the writing it's beneficial because like when they have to make characters leave, especially if there was ever any beef between the actual actor and the writers or the showrunners, they don't do the best job of writing them out of the show in a character worthy manner. And especially when these characters are so intertwined with a lot of other characters, it creates carnage for everybody else that they just have to deal with. And I get that there's some fun with the shock value, but a lot of times when you do that, you make a bigger mess that you have to clean up.
Mm-hmm.
So some of my favorite characters were like season 5 characters, so they've been around for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And we've seen, like, my favorite character was Jo, and so we've seen her grow and develop and everything, and could finally kind of learn to love herself again after some things that she'd gone through. And the moment that she learns to love herself, her husband leaves her for his ex-wife. And I'm like, why? Why? There's more to it than that, but not really. And so that was upsetting. And I just, after that, I was like, I don't need this anymore.
Oh, I hate that. Yeah, I'm glad I haven't watched it. And I feel like the latest Shonda content, aka Bridgerton, Scandal, or How to Get Away with Murder, if you watch either of those, it just gets, I feel like each one has got better. I think Scandal, from what I understand, is more my speed than Grey's Anatomy. I think How to Get Away with Murder was a bit of a like masterpiece, a new level for her. I think I haven't watched the latest like 2 seasons, I want to say, and I think it's over now. And I think it became a mess towards the end, but it's kind of one of those, like, I don't want to lump How to Go to a Murder and Riverdale into the same sentence. That is inexcusable and rude. However, they have some similarities in that both are trying to be a shock value mess and are not trying to hide the fact that they're a shock value mess. And How to Get Away with Murder does a really good job being a shock value mess with no hero. Nobody's trying to be a hero. Nobody is portrayed to be a hero. People are corrupt or amongst the leads. And once you kind of get past that, and if you like watch previous Shonda stuff, you know to expect that. It stands alone as an incredible, like, I saw somebody mention the other day that like one of the best lines in like modern television recently is why is your penis on a dead girl's phone? Like, that show is incredible. But going from that to something like Bridgerton, as she did, where she wrote good people and happy endings with a touch of complexity and gray that she's good at doing, no pun intended. I think it's just an interesting dynamic, but doesn't make me want to go back and watch her earlier stuff. I want to aggressively enjoy her latest stuff. Carrie says, good evening. What can you convince me to start watching with you? Well, Carrie, you are always good at getting us back on topic, and we are talking about The Good Doctor, which I can't really take credit for getting Kate to watch. She saw some YouTube clips and kind of dove into it. But Kate, how would you convince Carrie to watch The Good Doctor, having watched season 1? What were your favorite parts?
I liked that, especially for a medical drama in the day and age of really um, just erratic medical dramas, that it actually gave pretty consistent character arcs for all the characters. It made the drama like actual daily life drama, and it made 90% of the characters likable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's something about all of the characters, and I really do mean all of the characters. Claire is the closest to the exception because I see her as the closest to like flawless and perfect. She's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the characters do have some complexities to where they're at the very least annoying from time to time, and at the very worst make, objectively bad decisions or are not nice sometimes. But none of them ever, of the leads, ever really, to me, cross the line into being villainy for the week or bad or mean spirited or bad hearted or like aggressively a bad person. Even in the instance of what you said, where there's somebody picking fights or constantly kind of flying off the handle, it's still pretty excusable in the context of romance, and he takes the fall for it and leaves the shit. Like I think almost all of them have at least a little bit of good in them. There are some characters I do like more than others, and I get the sense that you do too. So talk to me about your favorites and maybe your least favorites.
So, I mean, from going and watching the clip I did see and then going back and actually meeting Leah, she's my favorite. I mean, she's she's an American Jemma Simmons. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that. I really liked her. I liked Sean because of the complexity. I liked Claire because of how good she is. I like Glassman because he's so sassy. um, a character I don't like, which I know you like, is Morgan.
No, Kate,
I'm
listen,
sorry.
listen. Is she mean, aggressive, overly competitive, unkind, hard to work with, and selfish? Yes. However, she has some redeeming qualities. None come to mind, but I do know that she
I was going to
has.
say that pause is very long.
She can be unintentionally funny. She is very skilled at her job. You know what? I'll give you an actual quality she has that I do think is a good redeeming quality for her. One that I think at the point that you've watched has perhaps already showed up, because I think early on you mostly do see her bad qualities, and that's like fair, and like spoilers, none of those go away, so like you might never like her. But one quality she has that I actually genuinely like, not just because I like villainesses, is that she is willing to be disliked in order to get things done. She's willing, like, it's not that she's unaware that people don't like her demeanor, her tone, her whatever. She is willing to be disliked to get things done. And it took me a second to see it because initially she kind of comes across even as a people pleaser. She's trying to get at least her managers or whatever to, at first I thought like her, but that's not what she's trying to do. She's trying to get her managers to recognize that she does excellent work and to like see her as better than everybody else, which is like not very nice, but like whatever. But she doesn't actually care if anybody there likes her. She genuinely does want to do really good work, and she is confident, maybe overconfident, thinks she does really good work and is willing to be disliked to get good work done. And I kind of like that about her. And I recognize she's got like 20 bad qualities for every good quality. But by the time you get to the current season, wherein she has a bit of a romance, you might actually root for it, or you might not root for it because they have her paired with a really nice guy that, like, most people think she doesn't deserve, or whatever.
I will say I don't absolutely despise her character. I think her character plays an interesting role because I would argue that out of the residents, she and Sean are the best at diagnosing. And so it's very interesting to see basically Sean being the least capable at communication and her almost having this supernatural ability of communication where she doesn't care anyway likes her, but she is to convince them that she is this type of person. She is able to be a chameleon basically for the patients. And to your aspect of saying like she doesn't care if she's disliked as long as she gets the job done, I can appreciate that. But I also want to point out that in surgery you're never working alone, and,
Mm-hmm.
and by making everybody hate you, you're not really being a team player. Also, you are a single person on your team at some point in your life. And I think she's in a really self destructive path. But that's just me. I think that her isolating behavior is very unhealthy and it's infuriating to me personally. Um, but I don't despise her. And have already been a couple moments where she's doing something selfish that somehow also has good effects for other people. So she technically got Jared his new job, which is great, I guess. But it was also very much in a manipulative way to basically just push him out of the competition instead of actually just winning the position on merit. So there's that.
She's very much an ends justify the means person, which is not good. And in any field, being not a team player is also not good. However, there are some qualities about her I admire and I find her entertaining. And she has a useful plot purpose in that she sets the scale for about as far as a character can go towards the bad person route without actually being a villain of the week. She's like, when you're looking for highest and lowest on the scale, she's like, she'll sit there and she'll kind of hold that lowest ground of like objectively not killing people, perhaps, but Carrie says, I don't think you're going to change Kate's mind, Cammie. You know what, Carrie? As always, you're right. And that is a perfect segue to something I also probably won't be able to change Kate's mind on, which is the romance of this show. So I'm hearing that you're liking Sean and Leia. thrilled about it. Love them. Love them. And early on, I did not think they were going to be like the ship, like with a capital T, capital S. I thought that she was just there as like a season one girlfriend to like show that Sean could be a boyfriend and that they would do a romance with him and one of the other residents, whether it be Claire, whether it be like insert any other girl there or like bring in a girl or whatever. Or like there was Carly, which I could not stand his romance with her, but whatever. You like Sean and Leia. Do you like any other ships other than Jared and Claire, which you've seen has ended?
To be honest, there aren't any shifts really happening yet. I asked you if Claire and Melinda's happened, but it hasn't actually happened yet. I could just tell from like episode 4 or whatever that they were already hinting at it. I was like, okay, and then it still hasn't happened. So we'll see when it happens how I actually feel.
Mm-hmm.
But taking into consideration the normal power dynamics at play, I don't typically like it when the direct supervisor of a person and the said person are involved romantically. I don't like it.
I don't either. Like, if that was real life, gross, disgusting. In this fictional sense, like maybe it's not as gross and disgusting. Maybe I liked it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when you get there what you think. Maybe you'll change your mind. Maybe you won't. But
Okay.
Sean and Leia persist. And I'm not even going to talk about this week's episode. A, because I don't want to spoil you. B, because we don't need that kind of negativity in our lives.
Well, I did start watching because of the last scene of the previous episode. So we know I enjoy pain, but I don't want to be spoiled. So thank you.
I will not spoil you. Existing and watching this show is constant pain. Well, that transitions to what else we watched this week. And I will then transition to a different kind of pain, which is this week's State of the DC Union. We're talking Flash, Supergirl, and Batwoman. Not yet Superman and Lois. I think last week I mistakenly said that this week is when Superman and Lois returns. That's actually next week. So we did get a wrap up of Supergirl. And in the wrap up, not wrap up of the season, but wrap up of this current arc. And as this arc was concluding, like my one main thought was simply that I think in the absence of Melissa being able to film a lot, because I think this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this portion of Supergirl was filmed when she was either having a child or had just had her child. So she has just very brief snippets throughout these episodes, and they're all kind of pre-filmed. In the absence of her, I am surprised and disappointed, equally surprised and disappointed that they didn't have Katie take over. Instead, they tried to sort of split it across the whole team and kind of give some pieces to Alex, her sister. They tried to give some pieces to the Dreamer and Brainy team up. They just tried to give pieces to different people. And I love that idea of like, in the absence of a lead, let's really lean on our ensemble. Having concluded that, again, admire the idea, respect it. I think that was a mistake. I think they should have had one long arc. And I, a biased person, think that one long arc should have been Katie McGrath, Lena Luthor centric, simply because that's their strongest player and perhaps most well-developed player. And because she has just now entered a space in the show where she's not 1000% potentially a villain anti-hero. She's more clearly like a hero and a member of the team. It would have been interesting to see her like step up as leader in Supergirl's absence. My one complaint, I admire the heart behind the ensemble thing, but that was a mistake. I also never want to see Midvale again. This show continues the proud DC CW tradition of having boring flashbacks. And I'm also disappointed to see Alex present day still making like rash, childish decisions, particularly if they were going to have her kind of be a leader in Supergirl's absence. I would like to see her behave like the older than me adult that she is. Other than that, however, I think that there were some admirable moments throughout this. Number one, I admire the presence of romance, even if I'm not really into the brainy dreamer romance. I think it's cheesy and like very much what was that show? Big Bang Theory. It's very Big Bang Theory-esque, like just kind of like, ugh, okay, cute, I guess. But I liked seeing like them prioritize romance, prioritize flashbacks, prioritize like various like DC CW elements, even if they didn't necessarily do them well. So that's where we're at with Supergirl, and we won't have to hear about Supergirl for a while. We will instead be talking about Superman and Lois. Are you excited for Superman and Lois to return?
I am. I have completely forgotten everything in that show.
Lois Lane, that's all you have to remember.
Fair.
For Batwoman, my first note that I had here is, can we come up with something other than cops? And then I go to the next line, and my next note is, I guess that's kind of the point. So I guess that's all I have on Batwoman. Moving on to The Flash. My note here, and I was going over my notes before the show and then tweeted this one, is the hoops they will jump through to get Barry to procreate without having sex are astronomical. So, Kate, let me explain to you Barry's children right now, okay? Just because the show was not already like incesty enough, they really wanted to like lean into it, you know? So the Speed Force has come to life and is taking human form. Okay. It has taken the human form of his mother, whatever her name was, Linda, whatever, Nora, whatever, which is also his daughter, but whatever. It's taken the form of his mother.
The daughter is named after the mom.
Right. But then apparently, because the Speed Force is created from him and Iris, in air quotes, which does not make sense because it existed when his mom died when he was a child. The Speed Force is their child. Therefore, the Speed Force factors, which are taking form in various humans, are his and Iris's children. And they even had a moment where one of the children died when they were trying to like get the Speed Force out of her or whatever. But then once he and Iris started getting along again, because like he and Iris keep fighting, then she came back to life, thus prompting him and Iris to like get along again. First of all, I feel like I say this literally every time I talk about The Flash or anytime I'm talking about any of the romances from these other shows, but had they done something like that with Oliver and Felicity, I would have flipped this table over. Had they been like, you got to get along for the children, like, oh, that's the lowest blow you could possibly do to a ship. I can't. Second of all, like he cannot touch his wife, and like maybe it's because it's illegal because it's his sister, but like this is fantasy world. Like if the Lannisters can do it, they can do it. I'm not rooting for them, but like, you know, they have rights after all. He can't touch his wife, but he has multiple children across multiple seasons, most of which are adults, just making it weirder. One of them is like in the form of his mom and is evil. Like the level of incest in this show is just like,
my brain hurts.
It's a bit much, and that's coming from me. And I feel like I have a high tolerance for bullshit, you know?
You just explaining that made my brain hurt.
It's so bad,
and
Kate.
Just it promotes my question one more time. why are you still watching it? Why is it still a thing?
That's a good question, and I will tell you why. Obviously, I'm watching it for Caitlyn slash Killer Frost, and they just wrapped up a 2 episode arc, which was very Caitlyn Killer Frost centric. Notably, this was completely separate from this whole like we're gonna kill the Speed Force but spawn children out of the Speed Force storyline. The Killer Frost storyline and Caitlyn was actually really interesting. They had separated, so they were basically like twins but like in separate bodies. So you had on the surface it might look like the good girl, the techie just wants to heal people person, and then you had like the bad girl with like the villainy past, whatever. But the law was after Killer Frost because she needed to quote pay for her crimes, even though she's done like a fraction of what Barry's done, and Barry doesn't have to pay for her crimes. So you had a series of episodes which was like the state versus Killer Frost, or the people versus Killer Frost, or whatever, where she goes on trial willingly. She turns herself in to go on trial. And it was very interesting, actually. That one storyline, and it did take precedence, was very
Barry
interesting.
Allen could never.
Oh, he would absolutely never. And he didn't understand why she was doing it either. And she was like, I'm going to turn myself in because, you know, I have committed crimes and they need to put me on trial. And I think that the good I've done for the city speaks for itself. Anyways, so the way what it came down to is very interesting because you supposedly had like the good sister and the bad sister because they started referring to each other as sisters. It was so cute. Again, the only female friendship the show has literally ever had. And Caitlyn, the good one, is so desperate to save Killer Frost, she is willing to like break the law to do it. So she starts doing bad things, whereas Killer Frost is so wanting to do good and protect other people. She makes the ultimate sacrifice. Essentially, the state makes the case that rather than life in prison, she should be administered this experimental drug that would take away her powers. Um, and it potentially kills some metas or maims them or does brain damage or whatever, but possibly not. But it'll take away her powers, and because she has a history of like being a villain or an anti-hero or whatever, she should lose her powers and be forced to be like forcibly injected with this cure. And she didn't want it, but eventually she makes the case to the state to instead give her life in prison. And because she was the first meta on trial for this, it sets the precedent that metas cannot be forcibly administered the cure. So she essentially takes life in prison to protect all other metas in the city. It's a really well done storyline. You and I were talking last week's show on like
Barry Allen could never.
literally would never. Barry Allen won't give up literally anything for anybody ever. Ever.
Because I'm listening to you, and the amount of similarities that this has with Bad Boy, Mr. Killer Queen, Oliver Queen, and yet I'm like, yeah, that made like total sense. Like that's the hero sacrifice. Yeah, you've made mistakes, but you're also now like sacrificing your freedom, your life, your whatever, to save all these other people in the long run. Barry Allen goes back in time because he's upset. Sorry.
He has, it's not even just that he is, no, I'm with you. It's not even just that he is selfish himself. It's that he fundamentally doesn't have an understanding of somebody else not being selfish. And they play that off as like naivety. Like they tried to play it off of like he's naive to the guilt that Killer Frost feels because he's never, you know, he doesn't have that kind of baggage. He does have that baggage. He just thinks he doesn't have that baggage.
He just doesn't feel it.
Right. He just doesn't feel guilt. So he doesn't go on trial. It's so frustrating. Anyways, that whole storyline was very interesting. You and I talked last week about occasionally you'll have certain storylines that seem to be timely in a like socio-political sense that aren't like obnoxiously on the nose, annoying, and like a third grade object lesson. And the Killer Frost storyline was a great example of that. Of it was this interesting, you know, you're interacting with a system. Is it that the system is oppressing its people and the court or the, you know, policing that she was experiencing was corrupt and oppressive, or was it that she was the one of it? But it was just a very interesting like people versus the system thing, and she's having to fight the system and protect other people that were otherwise being overly prosecuted or, you know, forcibly, you know, forced to take whatever. But it wasn't like obnoxiously on the nose where they take a very serious, real political issue and try to turn it into like a flash episode of the week. Very nicely done. With that said, she's now in life in prison. It's just Caitlin left. Caitlin thus far hasn't really got much screen time. So as for why I'm watching, my reason may have passed and I may get behind on Flash at this point. I'm half an episode behind on Batwoman for whatever that's worth. Carrie in the chat says, I think that makes sense for the actress Katie, but I don't think the character was set up to be the narrative lead, referencing Lena Luthor. True, but she is a Luthor. Certainly a Luthor should be able to take lead in a Supergirl story for a while. He also says, 2 kids, no coitus, Barry for the win. I feel like that's the direct opposite of for the win, but I don't know. Carrie says, I don't watch. I did read the recap review of the latest episode, and I made the same face as Kate. Kate's face, when I talk about Flash stuff, it brings me so much joy. To which end, that does bring
my brain is like melting out of my ear.
Yeah, felt that. That does bring me to a hold I have on the agenda for Crack Theory Corner with Kate, aka What Else Kate Watched This Week. So Kate, did you watch or read anything else this week?
I have just been rewatching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so not really. Nothing else to bring to the table this week, no.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine was great.
And I rewatched Pride and Prejudice, like as you have to.
Always. What was it I saw going around? Dev Patel and somebody else is getting cast in a modern adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Did you see that?
I have not seen that. I know Dev Patel just did David Copperfield.
Oh, fun. Okay. Well, I have my legs crossed and my leg was getting stiff and I needed to stretch it. It's like a punctuation mark. This is the transition point between Crack Theory Corner with Kate and Salty Cammie Corner. Okay. What's the time on the clock? I'm setting myself 60 seconds max to talk about this so I don't...
It is 8:47.
Freaking explode. 8:47 and 43 seconds. Okay, I can go until 8:49. Kate, I watched This Is Us this week. In this episode, Kevin's fiance, who just gave birth to his 2 newborn twins that she didn't ask for and is being a fantastic mother to them, is going wedding dress shopping. She is getting ready to marry him after he's proposed to her like a million times. She's way out of his league. She's way too good for him in every possible sense. And she's going wedding dress shopping. Her dad's abandoning her. There's just like a lot going on in her world. He is off gearing up for a movie premiere release or whatever for a movie he did, which sucks. And he's walking through this studio or whatever, and he sees in a Zoom meeting, like he sees on a big screen in a Zoom meeting, one of his ex-girlfriends from a previous season that I barely remember. And he like, gets distracted by her, goes in, makes this whole thing of like meeting with her. And in this, he's like, God, I hate fictional or real life guys who do this when they're doing something bad and they like play like naive, swept up, or innocent, where they're like, oh, you know, I'm just like so startled by this woman here or whatever. Like, oh my God, kill yourself. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but like in a fictional sense, maybe do. Anyways, he starts talking to this woman, gets all swept up in whatever. She's throwing herself at him. I don't understand why. She knows, because he's a celebrity, that like he is engaged to be married to the mother of his twins or whatever. And she's like, yeah, you know, good for you for just like rolling with it, even though I'm sure this isn't what you wanted, which doesn't even make sense because the whole reason they broke up is because he did want kids and she didn't. Like, anyways, so now in the preview for next week's episode, it's like apparently he's at least emotionally considering cheating on her, like emotionally cheating on Madison or whatever. Kevin needs to die. I say this with love, not for him, but for everybody else. Nothing but hate in my heart for him. This is the end of Kevin Pearson. He does not deserve rights. We're 8:50. I went 60 seconds over.
Here's the problem.
Go ahead.
Here's the problem with killing off a character like that is so central in the story. It has so many family ties. You killed him off, everybody mourns him like a hero. Does he deserve that?
No.
Does he deserve that?
That's a really good point you have there. How can we get rid of him then? He needs to suffer.
Get him to film a movie in Iceland or something. I don't know.
That's fair, yeah. Apparently his career is about to tank in this because like he did a movie but it's like not good, so he was really like insecure about that, and I think we're supposed to interpret that as being another reason he's susceptible to cheating. The only thing that can make cheating worse is cheating to make yourself feel better. Like that somehow makes it worse. Because, okay, first of all, fundamentally, and like, I don't care, call me old fashioned, call me a prude, call me whatever you want, but cheating storylines lose me for a character, not because I will not like follow and see it as like just a one-off of like they were drawn in by whatever. I think it belies several other like truly obnoxious character traits. Like it belies your inability to take 2 seconds to break up with your current partner if you want to pursue somebody else. It belies selfishness. It belies sort of this you're scared to commit one way or the other, so you're trying to ride this line. It belies lack of self-control. There's just a lot of things about a cheating storyline that make a character then irredeemable for me that like a murder storyline wouldn't do, right? But if the character is also then cheating to feel better about themselves, like he's cheating because he's in this insecure place because he did a movie that was shit, that makes it worse because you can't even frame it as like they were cheating because, you know, while they did want to be in this, you know, wonderful marriage or whatever, he had these like deep feelings for this other person, or whether it be he or she. She's cheating because, you know, she loves her family, but she has these feelings for this and that. Like, you can't even excuse it as a feelings-based decision. It's then just truly selfishness. You want to feel better about yourself, so you want your ex-girlfriend to think you're hot. Like, God, I hate this character so much, which wouldn't bother me if he was portrayed as a villain. Like, if he was portrayed as a villain, I'd be like thrilled. Love a good villain, and this is a good villainy villain. Apparently the show hasn't realized that the villain of This Is Us is Kevin Pearson. Carrie says, in the show, do they have Kevin making terrible decisions because narratively it's compelling, or do they not know what to do with the character otherwise? That's a good question. They may think that it's compelling, and fundamentally, if you watch like somebody like me, my reaction to the show, they might be kind of right about it being compelling because I'm watching it, and that is the part that's like most irritating to me. And for the sake of discussion, like I will say there are many other moments in the episode that I enjoy more and really do like, and if he was out of the show, like I would have plenty of positive things to talk about, but for the sake of narrative thread, this is what we talk about. But I think it would be possibly more compelling to at least have him kind of toggle between being good and bad. And they don't do that, to the point where like there was one episode you may recall recently where he did like bare minimum humanity. And I was like, let me tell you about the 1 week where I didn't hate Kevin. Like, it was like a big deal that I didn't. So it's like they're kind of trying to portray him as 50-50, but it's like 90-10. And I'd rather they at least acknowledge that it's 90-10. And I also want all his friends and family to realize that he's like 90% bad, 10% good. And by good, I mean bare minimum. And they all kind of see him as like 90 good, 10 bad.
Yeah. That just makes me think of like the one time I've ever seen a cheating proxy storyline in shows that I liked. It was so painful to watch, but all characters involved had that moral complexity of not always good, not always bad. You rooted for somebody, but you could actually understand in some aspects. You still didn't agree with this choice to cheat, not say thing, but understand why he did it. And that's compelling. Mm-hmm. Having somebody just pretend to be good and nobody else is having these issues and nobody else is imperfect in this situation, and have him be the garbage person but then treat him like he's the hero or at least a decent human being, even though his actions are saying otherwise.
Yeah. It's an interesting contrast to what's going on Good Girls with Beth and her husband and Rio. There's two things that make that much better as a quote unquote cheating storyline goes. And I hesitate to even call it that. Number one, her husband is absolute garbage. Her husband has already cheated on her multiple times with multiple of his employees, and he has both physically cheated on her by having affairs with other women, but he's also done stuff with their money behind her back, put them into debt behind her back, just cheated on her in all of the like ways in which you should not betray your spouse. Okay. And he is also like dumb, trash, insecure, just everything you can think of. Okay. So in a situation like that, I have no opposition to a fictional character cheating on their spouse. I'd rather her just leave him rather than cheat on him. However, I have no vested interest in their marital contract because I see him as having already broken it. At the other side of that also makes it better is I have no vested interest in having Beth come across as a good character. Within the whole show, Good Girls, the fundamental premise is that everybody is bad. Everybody is making bad choices. Everybody is being bad in multiple tangible ways wherein people die. She has held a gun to innocent people's head. You know, like she is objectively a bad person who does not believe herself to be a good person. Therefore, I don't need her to be like a 90-10, mostly good, just a little bit bad character. I've already accepted the viewer contract that I'm watching anti-heroes at best and baby villainesses at worst, if that makes sense. So that's my note on Good Girls. It's also excellent right now. It is wrapping up the season, and she still hasn't left her husband. Sad about it. All right. We are at recommendations. Do you have any recommendations for us this week, Kate?
I'll go ahead and say Poldark because that was the show I was referencing, and because I did forget one. Sanditon got renewed for season 2 and 3 without Theo James. Right. I know some people are really upset about that. I'm actually okay with that. So that's exciting. And so that would be another recommendation to watch.
Nice. I still do want to watch that show. And I could do without him because I don't care if they get rid of male characters from anything ever. And also, just based on his looks, I feel that he is very recastable because he looks like every tall man in Hollywood I've ever seen. Go ahead.
I just got frustrated because of what material they did have going off of the original novel. They basically just made their relationship a second rate Elizabeth and Darcy, and she was a fascinating character by herself, but he was just an even more rude and more obnoxious Mr. Darcy. And I was like, no, I want this other guy and her to end up together. I know it's not going to happen, but this is what I want.
Maybe it will happen now.
Probably not, but we'll see.
Well, my recommendation is what I watched this weekend, which was a Darren Brown special on YouTube. If you're not familiar with Darren Brown, he's sort of an anti-magician or anti-illusionist who does a lot of these sort of, he'll do stage shows, he's done Netflix specials, he's done BBC specials where he does like illusions and human manipulation type of tricks, but he is not like, he doesn't believe in magic and he doesn't believe in whatever. It's all just like, persuasion and science, and he's like anti-magic or whatever. And he had a really cool one where it was a documentary where he was trying to get somebody, basically like create a hero, get somebody into a headspace where they will do like rash heroic gestures for somebody that they don't care about. And it was very, very good. And that is called Sacrifice. That's on Netflix. It's like a one-off documentary. And he has another one, which is probably my favorite of all the specials that I've watched of his, and I've watched many, which is called Push, wherein essentially he's trying to do the opposite. He's trying to create a murder. He's trying to get somebody to push somebody off of a building. And both of those are excellent, really good studies into like human nature. If you want to break from like fictional TV for a bit and you want to kind of get into a cool little mind trap, highly recommend both of those. And we are 1 minute over. By next week, I'm not even going to say what it is. Kate knows what it is, and I'm not going to hold myself accountable because I'm a liar and a flake. But by next week, there might be a new show that I'm watching that I will show up to discuss. And if I show up next week not prepared to discuss it, this never happened. I will talk to you guys then.